Hey, it's Ben here, and welcome back to He Says, She Says, God Says. This is part 2 in our series on mental health in marriage. And if you haven't listened to part 1, then you need to stop right now, hit the pause button and go back and listen to episode 1 because it provides some really amazing context to this interview. In this interview, I talk to Max and Tash, who talk about how depression, anorexia, and anxiety have impacted their marriage. It's an amazing story. You'll learn a lot from here. Even if you're not suffering from mental health or haven't, you may well know someone who is, and it will provide you some really great content to use in the future. Just a quick warning though, we obviously believe in the ability for God to heal all manner of physical, emotional, and mental illnesses. However, if you need immediate help regarding mental health, in Australia, you need to contact Beyond Blue's support service via phone on 1300 22 46 36 or visit www.beyondblue.org.au or contact Lifeline on 131114 or www.lifeline.org.au. If you are not in Australia, then please see your general practitioner, local mental health service or your local hospital emergency department. Okay, time to get on to the interview with Max and Tash. So Max and Tash.
Hi, Ben.
Ben.
We've already recorded some stuff with you guys, maybe a few episodes ago. But today our topic is around mental health in marriage. And I know you guys have got some experience in that space. So you guys have been married about 10 years roughly now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me your stories. Where does it start?
Okay. So, well, I guess it probably starts with Max, actually. Max sort of, when it comes to mental health, had suffered with a little bit of anxiety from when we were dating, sort of more social anxiety, but that was quite manageable, but that was kind of lingering. Really understand that it was anxiety at that point. We just knew that he'd get pretty worked up before having to go somewhere social and would get pretty stressed, but that wouldn't happen all the time. And it wasn't really that debilitating. So yeah, it didn't impact our lives massively.
So did you know what that was at that point in time? Or was it just...
He was having panic attacks, basically.
Just push through, you know?
Yeah.
Always found like once I got to something, I was all right, generally, you know? But it's funny you said that because I actually didn't even think we were going to talk about it. I actually totally forgot. But now she said it, yeah, it just refreshed my mind.
I just remember that. So I guess setting it up is myself. I had never experienced any mental health issues growing up through my teen years at all. Never really experienced any anxiety or depression. Always a very optimistic sort of person, liked social gatherings. So I ended up, I guess, long story short, getting to it, I ended up suffering with quite severe depression, anxiety, and anorexia nervosa.
So how far into your marriage?
So that happened.
It would have been 2 years because we were at Port Noarlunga and that's when it started happening.
Yeah. So probably was pretty, bad at that point, but I do think it probably happened a bit prior.
Yeah, it might have been after.
I wasn't actually aware that I had become a bit unwell. So what was happening was I'd had some situations in life occur that caused me a lot of stress and I was unsure on how to manage that stress correctly. And almost subconsciously, my mind felt like that if it could control something tangible in my life, that I could navigate the stress that I was under better.
That was almost like it gave you a bit more control over the situations of the stress.
Absolutely, yeah. As I felt like a lot was out of control.
Yeah.
And so sneaky, anorexia is a really sneaky illness. Generally, I mean, most people don't actually know they're unwell with it until they're very unwell with it.
Yeah.
And so it just started with, me wanting to get healthy and exercise, starting to eat a bit healthier, and it turned into something a lot sinister, within about a period of maybe 2 or 3 months.
Wow, that quickly.
Yeah, it was almost, I kind of compare it to an addiction. So it starts off fairly innocent. And then I suppose with an addiction, the more you get addicted, the worse things become and the more dependent you are on whatever you're addicted to. So for me, that was restricting what I was eating and it fed the need. I say it fed the addiction, but it's not like I was taking something. I was actually taking things out. So it was kind of almost quite competitive as well. So, I'd cut down what I would eat, each day to the point where I wasn't eating a lot of food. And I was not, when you're not nourishing your body, your mind isn't thinking very clear either. So I ended up in a really dark hole. Don't know how else to explain it. I was very lost almost in my own sense of reality, which wasn't actually reality. Like physically, I actually didn't even see myself the way that I looked. I saw myself, to explain anorexia, you basically starve yourself but you don't think you look thin. So you think that you look like you're carrying more weight than what you actually are. And so I was quite unwell with this and wasn't actually aware of it.
Did you notice anything, Max?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I became a very, very ugly person. Would you agree? Not a nice person.
What do you mean by an ugly person?
Very selfish. So I did anything and everything to protect my habits that I had created for myself. So that was isolating myself from friends, from family. I would, tell Max that he wasn't to tell anybody about what I was doing. So whether I wasn't eating, I was very angry. I was quite cruel. That keeping my secret became my number one priority.
Right.
And that meant if it meant I lost my marriage, if it meant I lost my friends, if it meant I lost my relationship with my family, well, it was more important than all of those things at that point. So I definitely became a different person to what Max had originally married. Yeah.
How did you deal with that, Max?
It was the greatest game of balance I've ever played, of trying to, because people knew there was something wrong, like it didn't matter if she said anything or else, you can tell. So it was a fine line of protecting Tash, which was my number one priority, and also venting sometimes my frustration of how it was affecting me, and then it was so difficult to see her like that.
I bet.
It was just horrific.
To just paint a picture, I was also very depressed, and I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but I was very suicidal. So I used to pray. Makes me very sad to say this now because I'm so thankful for the life that I have, but I would earnestly pray every day that the Lord would not let me wake up every morning because I just felt like I lived in torture.
Yeah, and she would tell me that.
Yeah. My mind felt like it was torturing me. And so my only rest, I couldn't even rest when I slept. I would have nightmares. So to me, rest was just ending the reality that I was in. And, when you're unwell, like you're depressed, people can tend to believe that they're a real burden on others. And I certainly felt like that.
Yeah.
So I think Max was very cautious of not pushing me too far because he was worried about that as well. So that sort of probably paints a good picture as to how Max was trying to, as a young man, 20, 21, having this heavy burden to sort of carry and to figure out how to best support me, but also trying to get me help as well. It wasn't very straightforward.
So how did you try and get help?
I mean, I had people that I didn't tell Tash about that I'd spoken to. It was just like my best friend who's, I can trust with anything. Yeah. And then obviously her family and, some people in my family as well who were awesome. So it was really hard because it was like you'd make 6 months progress, right? And one person says one thing to her and it would take away those 6 months in 10 seconds. I had no idea, man, to be totally honest.
I think the hard thing is at this point I wasn't diagnosed with anything, so I didn't understand what was going on. I kind of thought, I knew I was very unhappy. I felt like I was losing my mind, but I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so Max was sort of unsure too. So we were both navigating it sort of blindfolded, not sort of knowing where to go to for help.
Yeah.
How to seek help out.
And I was going to church, still going to meetings and stuff, church. And, people were like, where's Tash? Where's Tash? Where's Tash? And I know they meant really well.
Yeah.
But that was really difficult as well to have to answer that every time I went to the meeting, That was really hard. So it was just a juggle, man, just juggling everything. But it was really difficult to hear us. I mean, obviously saying she's praying that she doesn't wake up.
Yeah.
That's horrific. Yeah. But probably the thing that I found the most difficult, knowing how much me personally, I need to have my rest and so I can recharge and get into my day or deal with what I got to deal with. Tash saying she didn't get any rest. you know, and that was at night, you know, when she's sleeping as well.
Yeah.
And she's like dreaming about it.
Yeah.
And it was just, I knew you had anorexia. Like I knew it. I didn't know what it did to someone.
Yeah.
Right. I thought it was just a mindset. I didn't realize that once you lose a certain amount of weight, your body goes into this survival mode and like the people don't think straight. I think it was Christmas. You're in hospital. Tash went to hospital for 3 weeks in this hospital anorexia ward.
Yeah.
And that was after however long. Like, it's really hard to remember exactly how long you had it for before that. But I remember visiting her and looking in the beds sort of next to her as I was walking in, and these like beautiful girls, you know, like lovely people. One was a mother that had 3 kids.
Yeah.
And she's lying in the bed being drip fed her food, like looking like a skeleton. And she had beautiful kids there, and she looked like a really nice woman that was loved. And that scared me because I thought, wow, like this woman's got 3 kids and she still can't get on top of it. Like, you know, I'm sure she was trying to for her kids, but it's that powerful and that consuming that obviously we'll speak later about how God healed Tash, which is the most amazing thing when you're going through it. But you just don't think it can be fixed. And I was just watching this woman. She was like, I think she would have been 40. And she was sitting there with a drip in her, feeding her food because she wouldn't eat. And her kids were there. Yeah, that was really difficult. And I didn't tell anyone because obviously we didn't want anyone to know. You know, the way Tash was like, and I was the same. I sort of got the same mindset as Tash of like protecting the secret, you know, because I didn't want people to think bad of Tash. And I really wanted her to get better. And if someone that wasn't as understanding or as wise, you know, maybe they hadn't been through something like that, found out and said something that they mean well, but it comes across the wrong way, for me, like I would have lost it for one, you know, but it also would have really put Tash over the edge. So yeah, it's funny. Like I have not thought about this till we started talking for a long time. And it's funny, like well, it's not funny, but just talking about it with it just like how full on that time
brings
was.
it back. Yeah.
Yeah. Man, that's full on, isn't it? So how long were you unwell for?
So I was unwell with anorexia up until I was 22. So I probably was unwell with that for about 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. So this is in your early part of your marriage.
Yes.
Yeah. This is year 1 to 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in saying that, God did miraculously instantly heal me of anorexia, which is just...
So let's talk about that.
Yeah. It's a funny story because I was obviously at a really low point. I was a little bit scared myself. I felt this thing that I had made me feel in control, I now felt was completely controlling me, and I couldn't see a way out of it. You know, when you're in a really dark place, sometimes it feels like you can never get out of it. And I guess for people that don't have the hope in God, you know, that's where sometimes people do, you know, take their lives because, you know, you're in that situation where it just seems like, how can you ever get yourself out? And I certainly felt like that. I couldn't see how I could get out. And I hung on so tightly to the hope of Christ. That was the only thing that was keeping me. I just knew that's all I had. And I felt like, you know, I was on a ledge and my little pinky was holding onto the edge of the ledge before I, you know, would fall down. I was just holding on ever so slightly to just the hope that I could be healed. And it's actually a really simple way that I got healed. I was away with some family members and was staying away, and I woke up in the morning and it was staying at a bed and breakfast, and it was for my mum and my auntie's birthday, and we were enjoying, all the women in my family were just enjoying a day out at Harndorf, and it consumed me so much, especially, you know, being out and about around food. You know, there was a lot of anxiety, and I just wanted so badly to just not have that anymore and just enjoy my life and spend time with my family. And I just said to the Lord, I just asked the Lord to take it from me. And I believed in my heart, like I really believed in my heart. And it was almost like I just took a step of faith mentally and gave over to the Lord and really, truly believed. I felt very scared of losing anorexia. I didn't want it to go because it was obviously a really false sense of safety, but it felt very real that if that would go and if I let go of that bad things could happen. And what I realized in that moment was that was all false and that was all a lie. The only thing that was going to ever truly keep me safe was God.
So that was the change. So that was the difference, because at that point you realised.
I knew that was the answer, but I hadn't given over.
Yeah.
And in that moment, I knew I had to take that leap of faith. And it wasn't a physical leap of faith, but it was in my heart. I just had to go, God, I'm giving this to you, even if it means right now I'm terrified, and if it means that you're going to take this away from me, even though so badly I want to feel better, I don't want to let it go because I'm comfortable where I am, you know. And I asked God in that moment, I said, please take this away from me. And I know that you're ultimately the one that I need to serve. And by doing that, you're going to keep me safe. And it was like a physical feeling came through my body, literally, and a feeling of lightness. Like I can't explain. All the sadness, the stress, the clutter in my mind left me instantly. Like very hard to describe how huge that was. And I went and had a big brekkie and I had bacon and eggs with my mum and my auntie and my yaya. And I was instantly healed that second, instantly healed. I even sought help to get myself physically better after that, which is something I never would have done because, you know, the whole point of when you're anorexic is you don't want to put on weight and you don't want to start eating more. But I knew I needed to get myself healthier, and I was just over the moon. It was just like this burden and this weight and this darkness just lifted from me and I was free from it. Just absolutely miraculous. And I owe everything. I owe my life to the Lord. We all owe our lives to the Lord.
A quick plug for another podcast called Revival on the Air Today. Listen to interviews with people from all around the world who've experienced amazing miracles. People set free miraculously from anxiety, depression, cancer, broken relationships, drug addiction, anorexia, glaucoma. The list goes on and on. You can find Revival on the Air Today on the podcast app you're listening on right now, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Podbean, etc. Plus, you can follow on Facebook and Instagram too. Just search for Revival on the Air Today.
But I really feel like I owe my life to the Lord. Yeah.
And so what was the conversation between you two when that happened?
Well, I remember you called me. Did you call me or maybe you messaged me? And you said I had bacon for breakfast and I nearly fell out of my chair. I could not believe it. And then I remember you told me what happened. And it's not that I always felt like I have faith, you know, I've always know God can do things, right? But this one felt a little bit impossible, to be honest.
And is that because you've been going through it for such a long time?
Yeah. It was just a grind, man. It was just grinding every day, just grinding. And it just felt like there was so much pressure, you know, that you couldn't, I don't know, it was never going to release.
Yeah.
When she told me, I think I believed it, but when I saw her in her face when she told me, that's when I knew it happened. I knew because she'd changed. She was different, you know. It was amazing. It was one of the most amazing things. I remember when you came home and you told me and I could just see it. And she was so like convicted, you know, like if I had any doubt, the way she told me, the conviction in her voice that God had healed her, I could not argue. Like I could just see she knew she was healed. It was so good. It was such a relief. We always knew it would be something that would be a massive testimony. So at the time, you're just going, why are we going through this? Like, haven't we got enough going on? Or this is so hard. We're supposed to be enjoying marriage.
Well, particularly at that stage of your marriage, you know, 1 to 3 years in, you know.
Yeah, thinking this isn't supposed to be happening.
Yeah.
And as a young person, you're just feeling so much pressure, you know. But just again, like God just trying you through fire, you know, to make you into that gold. And Tash got tried through fire and so did I, you know. I did as well. And
I can imagine it'd probably be equally as tough for both of you. You going through it, Tash, and all of the everything that brings upon you know, you going through it. But Max, for you too, man, watching that happen to someone you love so dearly.
I agree. I think that's a big part of in a marriage when one partner suffers with mental health is that it does impact the whole family. And there needs to be support there for the person who's suffering with their mental health, but there also needs to be support for the partner. And there's more to our story as well. I'll just finish off with mine. I did Then the Lord miraculously healed me of anorexia, but I still suffered with quite bad depression. And that really was, I instantly got healed of that after basically once I had fallen pregnant with my baby, which was incredible. But I guess the tables turned and Max became quite unwell and became quite depressed too. So it was funny, like once the Lord had kind of healed me and I was doing really great, we're like, sweet, things are going great. And then then Max had his meltdown. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Was there a period of time where things were okay? Like where you were both?
Yeah, there was. No, there was, because it wasn't heaps long. But what happened was I was playing footy and I had a head clash with a fella on the field and he got a fractured eye socket and it just smashed his face and I got knocked out cold.
Yeah.
And then, so I felt felt pretty funny, like I had concussion and stuff. And then, in my wisdom, I decided to play football the next week and I got hit in the head again.
Right.
And I think that was not long after you got better. And I came off the field with, the trainer came up to me, put a towel over my head because I was bawling my eyes out like a little baby. And it wasn't because I was in pain. I just couldn't control it. And I was thinking, what is going on here? And then I went to the bench. I didn't play any more of the game. And I was like to the trainer, what's happening? And she goes, sometimes when guys get concussed, they get angry. Sometimes they get sad. It just depends on what you're trying to cover. Sometimes I went to a doctor about it and she said, when you get hit, I got hit in front of the head, you lose control of your emotion. And obviously I had a lot of sadness build up from this whole time with Natasha that I just bottled.
Yeah.
And this second hit really affected me, that I couldn't control my emotion. And I remember I drove home. I was playing in Bridgewater, so I was sort of 45 minutes from my house. I shouldn't have driven. They were trying to stop me, but I was like we won the game and the guys were singing the team song and I was crying. And I was just thinking, I've got to get out of here. Like, this is so embarrassing. Like, what's going on? And got in my car, sort of snuck off, grabbed my keys before anyone could stop me. And then I drove home and I cried the whole way home.
And not just crying.
Like, it was uncontrollable. Like, I have not cried like that, honestly, since probably I was a baby. Like, it was crazy. And it really affected me. I didn't play footy for 3 months, which I love. That's something I really enjoyed doing. It's sort of an outlet for me and stuff. Yeah. And I tried to come back a little bit later and then I had the same sort of dramas. But I ended up seeing a doctor because I was really concerned about it. She was a really, really good doctor.
How long did it take you to go and see a doctor?
I saw a doctor pretty quick, yeah. I was speaking to someone that recommended a really good doctor because they had something else going on, and I saw this doctor and she said to me, you've had so much pressure in your life, obviously with what happened with Natasha and stuff, and obviously I didn't know how to deal with it. I just bottled it up.
Yeah. And
I couldn't talk about it, obviously what we were talking about before, like trying to protect Tash.
Yeah.
That I didn't realise how much it affected me. Like, it really affected me. Just that sadness that Tash had and that heaviness. Like, I was really heavy and I had held on to that really big burden for a long time, without like dealing with it, and other stuff in my life that, just didn't deal with and stuff. I didn't really understand that side of things. So yeah, I saw this doctor and she said, because you got hit in the head, like really badly twice, she's like, that's all come out now.
Like a release valve.
Yeah.
The top's off the bottle.
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, after that second hit, like my mindset changed. It was just crazy. And I didn't really understand it, but she explained it to me. Yeah. And then it went from a period for me of trying to work through that.
Yeah. So were you then did you suffer then that depression for a period of time after that?
Yeah, ages.
Yeah, and right. So what's ages? Months?
Oh, like years. Right. Years. Yeah. Sometimes controlled it and sometimes didn't. And
did you know what was going on?
Yeah. I was just going to say, it might be good to, if we explain sort of what that looked like for you. And I think sometimes, I don't want to generalize, but for guys, it seems to be that depression can look like you can be really sad. In that instance, Max would, lost a lot of motivation. He wasn't interested in much anymore, but also he became quite angry. And that's a really
recluse. I recluse massively.
And so it can sometimes look like you're just grumpy. You hear that old grumpy men, but
old grumpy men at 23 years old.
Yeah. And so it can be that you're not just sitting there crying. Depression can look like you're really frustrated all the time. And that probably was something, you dealt with.
Definitely struggled with that. And then it's not funny, but it's crazy how it went from like me looking after Tashy. And, you know, I feel like God taught me patience with Tash because it wasn't a quick fix, you know. And as much as it would have been nice to be a quick fix, it wasn't. And that's where we learnt everything he taught us, which is hard. But at the end of the day, I'm happy we learn it. But yeah, it went from that to Tash, like it turning, and then Tash had to have the patience for me because I was struggling, you know. Yeah. It was crazy.
And so was that turning up in your home life, in your work
everything,
life?
Man, work.
Like church life?
Everything.
Everywhere?
Yeah, church. I think sort of later on when it really started to affect me, I was like doing a bit of stuff with youngies, and then I just called up one of the guys and said, I'm done, sort of thing. And then, I probably didn't see me for about 3 months.
Yeah.
But I was just really struggling, you know. One thing that really, really motivated me, and again, like this is why I don't feel I'm happy to be vulnerable, like, is people talking about it, you know?
Talking about you or talking about their own experience?
Just talking about having depression, you know, because there's a stigma to it. And in the Lord, you know, as well, like we've got such an amazing life and we have this God that heals, you know, and he does things. And
it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Which is like, you just hear Tash, you know, being healed. Like I said, when I saw her and like all these other girls in the anorexia ward, that was like 15 years, like 20 years of just suffering with nothing that helped them. And then Tash got healed in a second, you know, from having 3 years of just horrible life to just pure joy because God healed her.
And I think, Max, you talk about this, what helped you through your depression, like practically, was having a really good group of friends that you trust.
Yeah.
The Lord, having the Lord and the scriptures, but then also having someone that is qualified that can give you help as well. So a counselor or a psychologist.
So what happened was I sort of, again, as what I was doing, like when Tash was struggling, I bottled it up, didn't say anything.
Yeah.
And then in the football, Buddy Franklin came out and said that he was suffering with depression. He pulled out of a finals series.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and he had just got paid a $10 million contract for 7 years. And I found that amazing. And then I also found his quote amazing that said, I just needed to pull out and just get myself right. Like I just needed to have some help.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because in my mind, everything turned in my mind and I just said, I just need a bit of help.
Yeah.
You know, like, and it's okay that I need a little bit of help. Like, and it started with telling my friends, like I have a really good close group of friends in the Lord that, you know, like pray for me, you know, stuff like that. I went and saw a counselor just to really try to understand what was going on and help understand why these sort of things happen. Like obviously the head knock was a bit different, but why I felt the way I felt before that all came out, you know, and then, you know, sometimes it doesn't fully go away. Like I still feel that I have symptoms, but I feel that the Lord helps me manage those symptoms like massively, you know, where I feel like back to being myself again.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. So Tash, if Max had broken his leg on the football field and he'd gone and got a plaster and come home and you had to look after him and take care of him, you'd probably understand how to do that pretty easily. How do you look after someone who's struggling with depression?
Well, honestly, it's hard. Yeah. So, you know, mental illness does change people. It changed who I was and it made me not a very nice person. And in the same instance, it changed my husband to be someone I didn't know and I didn't particularly recognize. I feel like the depression was quite all-consuming for him. His focus was just getting through the day. So he was unable to be there emotionally for me like you would in a marriage or that friendship that we talk about that, you know, we've had from the day dot. We always had a great friendship and he did recluse and really cut off from me, which made it quite difficult. So I guess the Lord taught me a lot through that time. And what I had to do was really go back and think about my vows.
Okay.
You know, for better or worse. And that was
sickness
a commitment.
And health.
Yeah. Yeah. And remember my commitment that I made to Max, and that no matter what Max's actions were or how, whatever he was struggling with, that was between him and God. But what am I required to do? And how can I love him best? And how can I encourage him best? And always make him feel that he is loved and that I'm his biggest supporter. I failed at that daily. So I certainly wasn't fantastic at that. And it was something that I had to really press into the Lord about and search the scriptures about as a wife, how I need to best love my husband, but also how do I best love him as my brother in the Lord? Because regardless of anybody else's actions, that's what God requires of us. So that requires a lot of patience. And like I said, I did not do that perfectly, but it was something that I sought the Lord after. So I sought him daily. And I guess practically, from my point of view, that looked at really having to build myself up spiritually so that I was strong and that I found comfort. I found really my companionship from God at that point, because I wasn't getting that from my marriage because, you know, Max was unwell and we only need the Lord. So he's all of that to us. Being in a healthy marriage is just a blessing on top of that. So we don't need that. All we need is God. And you really learn that when everything else has been taken from you. I think when someone suffers with mental health, they already feel pretty rotten. They already feel unlovable and generally fairly guilty.
Yeah, the guilt's the big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just feel terrible. It's
So what was the guilt?
Well, it's funny, just listening to Tash speak then about how she found companionship with God. I knew that I wasn't giving Natasha, much, because I was really struggling.
Yeah.
And it's funny, like, you just don't care. You just get in this hole and it just really affects you, like really, really affects you. And like you said before about the broken leg, like we can see someone if they have a broken leg and they're screaming, but if the mind's broken, you can't see it and sometimes you don't hear the noise.
Yeah.
But it still was damaged as a broken leg, Just going on what Tash said about how she found a companionship with God, I remember I can just picture her face, when I'd snap back about something, I just lost care. And her like having this joy of the Lord.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Like I remember seeing it in her face.
Yeah.
And it's not that I wasn't trying to upset her.
Yeah.
I just couldn't help it, but I could see in her face, like she was so happy.
And what did that do to you when you saw that?
It made me feel so good.
Really?
That God was looking after her.
Yeah.
I probably wasn't doing a heaps good job.
Yeah.
Yeah. It made me feel amazing.
Yeah.
That God was looking after her. Yeah.
I guess it's possible, like all things are possible with God. And sometimes you can feel in a marriage when your partner's not all you're wanting them to be, that God is all that you need. And just really honing in on, we know that, but do we actually really know it? And do we really put our faith and trust in that? Because he does come through. And it doesn't mean that there aren't really hard days. I'm just talking about just what Max said about snapping back. Your first instinct when someone, makes a remark at you that's uncalled for, you get your back up straight away and you want to say something back. But it's the Spirit of God inside of you when you've been praying to stay patient and to continue to try to love that person regardless of their behavior towards you, that the Spirit helps you with that self-control. And you make a wise decision and go, this is not going to profit much. If I say something back at you, it's just going to make a big situation out of nothing. And so I just remember actually there's been lots of situations where I've just gone, praise the Lord, it's all good, hallelujah. I just need to pray for him. And that sounds really simple, but it's what you just got to do. Like you got to have that love. That's what Christ showed us.
I want to pick up on something you said there too, because we're often, it doesn't matter who it is we're praying for them, right? We want them to be healed. That's our prayer and that's our heart's desire. But you also said you prayed for yourself to turn up the right way in those conversations. And that gave you then the wisdom to not respond through that prayer. I think that's a really interesting point.
Well, I guess there's not a whole lot you can control in those situations, right? And I don't know the Lord's will. I'm not sure if the Lord's will was to heal Max. I don't know. But the one thing I do know is that the Lord promises to help me, to give me wisdom when I need wisdom. And you do need a lot of wisdom when you've got a partner that's unwell, and you need patience, wisdom, and you need to love and those fruits of the Spirit. And it's easy to use the fruits of the Spirit when your husband's fantastic, or, you know, life's all dandy and you're feeling on top of things. The struggle is when things aren't going well and someone's not treating you well. Do you still, you know, that's a really difficult time.
Well, that's when we need to call on the Spirit, because really, you know, if everything's just wonderful and dandy and perfect, what do we need the Spirit for?
Yeah.
What do we need God for?
Yeah. And it absolutely goes against human nature.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Your first instinct is right. You know, how dare you? But that's not what Christ calls us to. And that never ends well either. And, you know, especially now having a baby for both of us as well, you know, in that family unit, you're now an example to a child. And so there's that weight, that motivation, I suppose, to make sure you're doing things the right way scripturally so they can see that too. But it's not easy.
So when did it change for you, Max?
Well, it's funny, Benny, because it's still something I manage. Like Tash spoke about, she had an amazing healing, and that's amazing. But I think it's something that, it's not that I haven't prayed about it. I've prayed about it and stuff, but it's amazing. Like, I think it's always going to be there. But the way I feel now, and I've felt for a long time, is I've felt like myself, you know? And I think what's got me to this path to get to where I am now, and I have been for a while, is, you know, like there's natural things that help. Like I saw a counsellor, like medication was something as well that did really help. And then obviously naturally talking, you know, just I know it's something when people talk about depression a lot, it's about talking, you know, like especially for guys, I think we don't talk. And
talking therapies are a very powerful way of dealing with anxiety and depression.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's amazing. And I think, again, while like I'm happy to be vulnerable, because it's like it can get anyone, you know, like it doesn't matter how good you are, how good you think you are, how good your life is, it can just get you, you know, and all of a sudden it's got you. And if anyone is struggling that's listening, I just want to say, like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. You know, a lot of people really struggle with anxiety and depression or whatever they're struggling with. It's fine. And I'm really happy to put my hand up and be like, yeah, like this has affected me. And I'm the sort of guy, I don't really like things being made a big deal about me. So I'm not going to go out there and go, yeah, like I'm really struggling, help me sort of thing. You know, that's just not my personality. I don't like that. But I'm happy to put it out there that it's something that I've really struggled with. But that was in like the natural, going back to your question about what's helped, like the natural side was those things. But the spiritual side, and it's the same with everything, like it's so, Tash before said it's simple. It's so simple. And I'm so happy it is. And it's just praying in the Spirit. Like it just changes you, you know. When I'm walking in the Spirit, I'm so different to when I'm not.
Yeah. And in your tough times, so after you had your accident, well, after you had etc., were you still praying solidly in the Spirit when you were in your darkest times?
No, I wasn't, you know. And again, like it's a hard one because I guess when you're in the depths, sometimes it's really hard to pray.
That's exactly right.
So I think if someone's listening and they are in the depths, like there's no condemnation, like it's okay. There's no judgment, like it's all right, like it'll get better. But yeah, like I wasn't, like I found it really difficult. But again, like what made it better, Benny, is I put my hand up and said I needed help. You know, from the second I made that decision to do that, whatever it took, whether that was me putting myself out there telling people that I was struggling, whether that was going to see a counsellor, whether that was going to see the doctor, whether that was going to talk to people that are close to me, people in the fellowship, my brothers and sisters, opening up and going, hey, look, I got a problem here. From the second I did that, that's the second it all started getting better. I feel like it was the same. We spoke about it like I don't know if it's going to be on this podcast or another one, but about when I first started going out with Tash. And before that, when I started to want to follow the Lord, I made a decision in my heart that I wanted to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And God rolled with it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened with this. I made a decision that I wanted to get better and God rolled with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes like God works with you. Yeah. Like every day I got to pray, and I got to pray anyway, whether I got depression or not. I got to read the word, whether I'm struggling or I'm not. But yeah, it's just the Lord that gets you through it. Yeah, it really is. But one final point, the Lord helps you with your prayer and reading the Bible, but God also helps you with your friends, and he also helps you. There's things there that are natural that can help you as well. And God, I feel like the counsellor I spoke to was from the Lord. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes it'd be like, oh, just pray about it and it'll be okay. I prayed about it and this counsellor was amazing. Like it actually changed me a lot. It helped me so much. And I felt like the Lord completely blessed it and completely helped me. Same with the doctor I saw, you know, so just dealing with it, you know, day to day and whatever, it's just the Lord that gets you through it, you know, and he always gives you a way out, you know. You just got to ask him. Sometimes that's the battle.
The scriptures, that's exactly right. And I think you mentioned before that the scriptures are so simple, you know.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just takes us a while to get there.
Yeah.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, Benny.
Yes, the Lord's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, glory to him.
Good on you.
Legend. Thanks,
Cool.
Benny.
Thank you.
What an amazing story. Thank you so much, Max and Tash, for sharing your story and for sharing what God's done in your life. It's truly amazing. We are planning another episode on mental health in the future, so stay tuned for that. I'm sure you'll find that one a fascinating one also. I have a favour to ask. What I'd really love for you to do, if you're enjoying our podcast, is to rate or rank or provide a comment on your favourite podcast app, particularly if you're on Apple Podcasts, because what that does is that pushes our podcast higher up in the rankings when people are searching for topics like this. And if you're enjoying it, then we want others to hear about the amazing things that God can do in people's lives. So please rate or rank or provide a comment in your favourite podcast app. You can find us on fundamentally everywhere on all the podcast platforms, including Google, Spotify, Apple, Podbean, etc. And also on the web, he says, she says, godsays.com, or Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. So until next time, stay tuned and we look forward to having you again. Max and Tash, I start that again.
Yeah, I've lost my train of thought now. Because what was your question? I'm going, how do I bring this back around?
I knew she had gone
She was going, how much should I say?
Yeah.
How much can I say?
100%,
Right, that's where the head was going.
Yeah.
You
We
can see
need to
that.
be careful.